Imagine a peaceful flight cruising at 35,000 feet, where passengers relax, anticipating a routine journey from Jakarta to Singapore. But in mere moments, this calm is shattered as SilkAir Flight 185 inexplicably plummets from the sky, crashing into Indonesia's Musi River with no survivors. What caused a modern Boeing 737 to suddenly dive, leaving investigators with eerie silence from its black boxes? Was it mechanical failure or something far more sinister? Join us as we uncover the chilling mystery behind one of aviation's most controversial and haunting cases. On December 19, 1997, at Soekarno-Hatta International Airport in Jakarta, Indonesia, the crew and passengers of SilkAir Flight 185 readied for their journey to Singapore. Ground staff completed their pre-flight inspections on the Boeing 737-300, ensuring all was in order for the short international flight. Pilots reviewed the flight plan, checking weather conditions along the route, while passengers settled in for what they expected to be a routine flight. SilkAir was a regional airline based in Singapore, serving as the full-service subsidiary of Singapore Airlines. Founded in 1989, SilkAir primarily operated short and medium-haul flights across Southeast Asia, China, and India, connecting travelers from Singapore to popular destinations in the region. Known for its reliable service and commitment to safety, the airline built a reputation as a trusted choice for both business and leisure passengers. Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, located in Tangerang, just outside Jakarta, Indonesia, is the main gateway to the bustling capital and one of the busiest airports in Southeast Asia. Named after Indonesia's first president, Sukarno, and vice president, Muhammad Hatta, the airport opened in 1985 and quickly became a major hub for both domestic and international flights. SilkAir Flight 185, operating under the call sign SLK 185, was scheduled to fly a short international route from Jakarta, Indonesia, to Singapore on December 19, 1997. Covering approximately 880 kilometers, 547 miles, the flight was expected to take just around 80 to 90 minutes, depending on air traffic and weather conditions. After departing from Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, CRJK, the aircraft would ascend to a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, 10,668 meters, following an almost straight northward path over the Java Sea before descending towards Singapore Changi Airport, SIN. The aircraft involved in the incident was a Boeing 737-36N, serial number 28556, registered as 9VTRF and powered by two CFM56-3 B2 engines. It had completed its maiden flight on January 27, 1997, and was delivered to SilkAir on February 14, just 10 months prior to the crash. At the time of the accident, it was the newest addition to SilkAir's fleet, having logged over 2,200 flight hours and 1,300 flight cycles. This remains the first and only fatal hull loss in SilkAir's history. In command of the flight was Captain Su Weiming, Chinese Zhu Weimin, Pinyin Zhu Weimin, a 41-year-old Singaporean and former A4 Skyhawk pilot. Beside him was First Officer Duncan Ward, a 23-year-old from New Zealand. On board SilkAir Flight 185 were 7 dedicated crew members, each contributing to the smooth operation and service of the flight. 6 of the crew members were Singaporean, including the captain and several cabin crew, all trained to provide exceptional care and safety for passengers on the short journey to Singapore. The seventh crew member, First Officer Duncan Ward, was a young New Zealander assisting in the cockpit. SilkAir Flight 185 carried 97 passengers from diverse backgrounds, representing 13 different nationalities. Among them were Singaporeans, Indonesians, and passengers from countries like the United States, Germany, Bosnia, and Herzegovina, and several other nations. Among the passengers was Bonnie Hicks, a well-known Singaporean model and author who was traveling on the flight. At 15:37 local time, 08:37 UTC, the sleek Boeing 737 rolled down the runway 25R at Jakarta's bustling Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, its engines roaring to life as it lifted off into the sky. With its nose pointed towards the horizon, the plane began its 80-minute journey to Singapore's Changi Airport. Passengers settled into their seats, anticipating a smooth flight as the aircraft ascended above the sprawling city below. The weather forecast for the route was generally favorable, with clear skies expected for most of the flight. However, there were some thunderstorms reported near Singkep Island, located about 120 kilometers, 75 miles, 65 nautical miles south of Singapore, which could potentially affect the approach into the destination. Despite this, conditions were considered typical for the journey. The aircraft was cleared to climb to a cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, flight level 350, approximately 11,000 meters, and was instructed to head directly toward Palembang. At 15:47 and 6, while climbing through 24,500 feet, 7,468 meters, the crew requested permission to proceed directly to the party waypoint, 0 degrees 34 minutes south, 104 degrees 13 minutes east. By 15:53, the crew had reached the assigned altitude of flight level 350 and received clearance to continue directly to party, with instructions to report when abeam Palembang. At 16:05, Captain Su may have taken the opportunity to leave the cockpit for a bathroom break, and during this time, pulled the circuit breaker for the cockpit voice recorder, CVR, effectively turning it off. The circuit breaker was located on the electrical panel behind the captain's seat, out of the co-pilot's line of sight, and he was unaware of this action. As a result, the CVR failed to record any crucial cockpit conversations in the critical moments. At 16:10, air traffic controllers informed the flight that it was abeam Palembang and instructed the crew to maintain flight level 350, as well as to contact Singapore Control upon reaching party. First Officer Ward acknowledged the instruction. At 16:11, nearly 6 minutes after the CVR stopped recording, the flight data recorder, FDR, also ceased functioning. Captain Su returned from his bathroom break and, it is believed, may have fabricated an excuse to send First Officer Ward out of the cockpit. Once Ward was out, Su reportedly locked him out of the flight deck and then disabled the FDR. It is presumed that Su did this to ensure that no record would be made of the actions he was about to take. After taking control of the cockpit, the captain began carrying out his previously planned intentions. Flight 185 remained level at flight level 350 until it began a rapid, nearly vertical dive around 1612. As the aircraft descended through 12,000 feet, 3,700 meters, the immense forces from the near supersonic descent caused parts of the aircraft, including a significant portion of the tail section, to break away from the fuselage. Seconds later, the aircraft crashed into the Musi River near Palembang, Sumatra, killing all 104 people on board. The entire dive from cruising altitude to impact lasted less than a minute. The plane briefly exceeded the speed of sound before hitting the river. Wreckage from the crash was found embedded 15 feet, 4.6 meters, into the riverbed. The aircraft broke into pieces before impact, with the debris spread over a wide area, though most of the wreckage was concentrated in a single 60-meter by 80-meter area at the river bottom. No complete body part, or limb was found, as the entire aircraft and passengers disintegrated upon impact. Only 6 positive identifications were later obtained from the few recovered human remains. The investigation into the accident was led by the U.S. National Transportation and Safety Board, NTSB, and Indonesia's National Transportation and Safety Committee, NTS. Both agencies were headed by prominent figures. Senior investigator Gregory Feith led the NTSB team, while the NTSC was headed by Professor Itarjo Diran. The investigation was also supported by technical experts from Singapore, Australia, and the United States. The investigation into the crash was hindered by a lack of solid evidence. The Boeing 737-300 was nearly new, and both SilkAir and Singapore Airlines were known for their high standards. The weather was clear and no distress signals were sent. The key issue was the disabled cockpit voice recorder, CVR, and flight data recorder, FDR, which could have revealed crucial details. After 3 years, the NTSC concluded on December 14, 2000, that the cause couldn't be determined due to the lack of evidence. The NTSB in its report stated that there was no technical failure and that the CVR and FDR had been disabled by human intervention, likely by Captain Su, with a suspected intent to commit suicide. According to the Wall Street Journal, 6 months before the crash, Captain Su was disciplined for independently disabling the CVR. He had also recently suffered a significant financial loss, losing over $1.2 million in a failed venture. Su, regarded as one of the most skilled pilots in the Black Knights aerobatic team, had also purchased a $600,000 life insurance policy, effective from December 19, 1997, the day of the accident. Investigators also discovered that his monthly income was insufficient to cover his family's expenses, and he was in debt due to credit card usage. Su was known for his gambling habits, where he lost more often than he won. Su was described as strong-willed, reserved, and somewhat distant from his colleagues, having had conflicts within the flight crew. He was notorious for disregarding regulations, such as exceeding speed limits, making risky maneuvers, and flying above the prescribed altitude, frequently violating company policies and procedures. According to Australian journalist Geoffrey Thomas from the Sydney Morning Herald, Captain Su Wei Ming was known as a wild horse, a talented pilot but with many flaws. Citing sources close to Indonesia's Aircraft Accident Investigation Committee, AIC, Thomas reported that shortly after joining SilkAir, Su caused a safety incident on March 3, 1997, in Manado, Celebes. He had the aircraft flying too high and too fast while preparing to land, creating a risk of overrunning the runway. Fortunately, First Officer Lawrence Dittmer, a New Zealander, intervened just in time. On June 24th at Changi Airport, Su disabled the CVR before takeoff. First Officer Dittmer refused to fly with him unless the CVR was reactivated. After a strong objection from Dittmer, Su reluctantly complied. From that point on, the two did not speak to each other. Su's disciplinary action was reported up the chain, and his pilot training license was revoked. He filed a complaint, but it was rejected. SilkAir provided $10,000 in compensation to each victim's family, the maximum allowed under the Warsaw Convention, and Boeing also made an undisclosed payment. In July 2001, 6 families began legal proceedings against SilkAir, alleging that the crash was caused by pilot actions after rejecting a $200,000 compensation offer. However, in October 2001, the Singapore High Court dismissed the claims, ruling that there was insufficient evidence to prove the crash was intentional. Memorials for the victims were established at 2 locations, one at the burial site within the Botanical Gardens near Palembang, and another at Choa Chu Kang Cemetery in Singapore.